The New South Wales Treasurer has warned Sydney could soon become like San Francisco, where even middle-class workers are struggling to make ends meet if we fail to act on the housing crisis. He told yesterday's Sydney summit that the right to preserve heritage communities and to object to change should be balanced with the right to own a home, something that is a challenge for younger generations. Joining me live now is the New South Wales Treasurer, Daniel Mookhey. Daniel, thanks so much for your time. First of all, this is a big, intractable problem. How are you going to solve it?
Well, we're making a strong case for why it's so important for us to add to New South Wales's housing stock. And the reason why that is important is that if we do want our children and our grandchildren to have the opportunity to accumulate as much wealth as their parents and their grandparents, they need to have access to the prospect of home ownership. And the facts are pretty straightforward. That trend is declining. Fewer and fewer people who are between 20 to 35 are in a position to get into the housing market compared to perhaps their parents and their grandparents. And I think that we shouldn't be giving that up easily. I think we can balance the right for people to have a home with the right for other people to preserve and enhance the character of their neighbourhood. My main message is that there's nothing to fear by the idea that we'd have a few more homes in New South Wales, and that will help our kids and our grandkids have the same opportunities that my generation and the generations above me have had.
Yeah, sure. But what you're talking about is going up rather than out. Why is, demolishing heritage homes on the North Shore to build bigger apartment blocks, is that really going to solve this crisis?
Well, the first point to make is that no one is proposing to demolish homes to make way for bigger apartments. What we are proposing to do is to locate homes near transport infrastructure. Again, we are borrowing so much money from our kids and our grandkids to build transformational projects like Sydney's Metro West and Sydney's Southwest Metro. We've already built the Northwest Metro. I don't think it's that unreasonable to say that a kid and a grandkid who will be paying for these projects when they have to repay that debt also have the opportunity to own a home that is nearby that rail line.
But you're not talking about a house, are you? You're actually telling young people, Treasurer, aren't you, that the dream of owning a home and having a backyard for your kids to run around is pretty much over. You're talking about young families needing to get used to the idea of moving into apartments near train stations.
Well, first thing I'd say is no. A really good example about how you can have both is a place like in Sydney's Burwood and Croydon, where in Burwood that council has done a fantastic job of figuring out how they could take advantage of the prospect of a major rail investment to transform. But they've made the case that means that they can protect the neighbourhood character of a place like Croydon, which is one of Sydney's great heritage suburbs. We can get the balance right.
What does that mean, though, Treasurer, to be fair? What does the balance right mean? Yeah, what does the balance mean, though? Are you being honest with people? If they want to live in Sydney and if, you're finishing high school right now thinking of going into university and you're maybe going to start a family in 10 or 15 years' time, the reality is if you're an average wage earner, you're probably going to be moving into an apartment. Is that true?
Well, I make this point that there are a variety of housing choices that are available to people in New South Wales, and there will always be a choice between apartments and neighbourhood blocks and suburban blocks. I'd also make the point, as a lot of people have said, a lot of people are living in apartments. And a lot of people are raising children in apartments. And for a lot of people, that is a choice that they are making as they balance their own financial circumstances. I want people to have a choice over what type of home they can own. But right now, we're on a trajectory where we're risking an entire generation not being able to own a home at all.
So you're talking about not wanting grandchildren to be paying for new infrastructure projects. So is that not at all on your agenda?
No, I think that the point I'm making is that if we are going to be making such an investment and using public debt, which is appropriate, then we need to make sure that we are yielding a strong housing return as well, because that's what is needed in order to make sure that we can both grow our state, make sure there are people to live, and hold on to the egalitarian ethos that has made New South Wales a great place to live.
Yeah.
But I'd make this point. If we choose to do nothing, if we simply say that nothing should change, then the problems that we're dealing with right now will simply compound over time. And you should look to cities like San Francisco and elsewhere to see what the consequences are when a society makes a decision that it no longer wants to house its population.
Yeah.
You find yourself in a situation where more and more people on good incomes find themselves locked out of the prospect of home ownership. That is very jarring to the experience and the promise that we make to our citizens here in New South Wales and across Australia. And we do have a moment in time where we can make better choices so we can ensure that people have a roof over their head at the same time that they have the opportunity to build wealth. And yes, that doesn't come at the expense of neighbourhood character.
What does it take to own a home in Sydney these days? Have you done the numbers of what you need to earn, Treasurer?
Yeah, I mean, again, a median sort of property price in New South Wales would see you needing somewhere between about $180,000 to $200,000 as a sort of borrowing income, if that's what you wanted to buy the typical house. It should make this point. That's a lot higher than it was before, and as a consequence, the number of people who are buying homes in there is they're delaying those purchases to later in life. It used to be the case that a person generally had a mortgage by the time they were 25 to 29, just a few decades ago. That's now been delayed to about 35 to 40. And I make this point. If we continue to see people have to delay the opportunity to buy a home, then what will happen is that it will put a lot of pressure on their superannuation and will put a lot of pressure on our pension schemes. The fact that people are buying homes a lot later in life has consequences. It's been declining by about 4% per decade over the last 4 decades. We can interrupt that trend. We can make better choices today so our kids and our grandkids do have the access to the housing market that, again, my generation and generations above have taken for granted.
So $180,000 you need to be earning to be able to afford the median house in New South Wales. And your mates in Canberra have just told those people that they're rich and they're not getting as big a tax cut. What do you think about that?
Well, I make this point. Most people who are perhaps entering the property market are doing so as 2 people, not necessarily 1. But I'd also make this point that the fact is we need to be building more homes. And that is a part of the reasons why this government, as a new government, has been making such a big case for why we need to add a bit more to New South Wales' housing stock. I'd make this point. Property prices would be about 1% lower today had we simply added 1 story above every building we built in the last 5 years.
Right. How many homes have you built since you've come to power?
Yeah, I mean, again, the numbers are slightly up, but they're nowhere near what we'd like to see. Last year we had about 48,000 completions. We look at Victoria that had about 58,000 completions. We know that we have a lot of work to do to catch up here in New South Wales. It is disappointing that year after year we've seen a decline in the number of completions taking place in New South Wales. We don't pretend for a second that you can turn that around quickly, but we make the point that we have to try. If we do nothing, if we simply tolerate this status quo, then we'll have we run the risk of having a landed gentry where some people own homes and some people's ability to own homes depends on whether or not they're going to inherit wealth.
Yeah.
And a lot of other people who work very hard won't have a realistic chance of home ownership.
Well, let me finally ask you this, because it's a longer conversation. I hope to have more conversations with you like this, Treasurer. But one thing that is within your power that you could do quite quickly, if you wanted to be bold about it, is do something about the tax system that you have control of, things like stamp duty. Don't you agree that if stamp duty wasn't so high, that people would be able to move or more inclined to move out of big homes that didn't suit them so much anymore? Will you do something about that?
Yeah, that's why we have already in our first year made sure that any first home buyer who buys a property less than $800,000 pays no stamp duty. That covers the overwhelming majority of first home buyers.
Yeah, that's first home buyers, but I'm talking about the whole system.
To them.
I mean, if you're just talking about first home buyers, you skew the market. Will you do something more bold?
Well, I'll make this point. The challenge is acute for first home buyers, and often because they are competing with investors. And so we took a policy to the last election to single them out for praise and to single them out for assistance when it comes to paying stamp duty. We've proud to have implemented that policy that has made sure that the overwhelming majority of first home buyers don't pay any stamp duty. Broader questions around tax reform, again, will always treat ideas on their merits. I've made this point before.
So you want ideas on their merits, but do you have any of your own plans?
Well, again, Laura, we have already implemented the policy that we took to the election. We are seeing its effects right now. The fact that a lot of people who have bought their first home aren't paying stamp duty in New South Wales. That's made a difference. It's especially good for regional New South Wales, where a lot of first home buyers won't ever have to worry about paying that stamp duty. So we took that policy to the election. We had a good debate with the other side of politics. The people of New South Wales made a choice. We've implemented that decision.
Okay, we'll speak to you soon, Treasurer. Thanks so much.